Here's what's coming up on the program today. Countries shut their borders to flights from southern Africa as the EU Commission recommends the same for member states. Experts in the World Health Organization meeting to determine official name for the newly detected COVID variant and whether it is a virus of concern. Plus, Ethiopia's Abiy Ahmed seen in military uniform following his vow to fight rebels at the war front. A warm welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani in Lagos. The world is seeing another variant of COVID-19 added to the growing number of infections across Europe. Nations now entering into a fourth and fifth wave and deploying restrictions to help keep the numbers down. The new variant was first detected in South Africa earlier this week. It is said to be very different to the others that have emerged so far. Scientists say it is the most heavily mutated version yet, meaning vaccines, which were designed using the original strain from Wuhan, may not be as effective. The new variant, which has also been detected in Botswana, Israel and in Hong Kong, is yet to be given a more memorable name like Delta or Beta, and is currently known as B11529. Experts within the World Health Organization are meeting today to name it and to announce whether it is a variant of concern or just a variant of interest. In the meantime, countries have begun banning flights from South Africa, and the list is growing. So far, France has become the latest country to announce a ban on flights. The UK announced new restrictions, as did Singapore and Japan. The EU is proposing to ban flights from the region across the whole bloc. South Africans have sharply responded to news about the flight bans and the emergence of a new COVID variant, while they remain confident of the country's scientific expertise and the speed with which South Africa has been able to identify and share information about the new variant. There's also a strong sense that the nation is being unfairly punished for its successes. They're also concerned existing vaccines may not be able to stand up against the new variant.
My fear currently is travel restrictions, because that's a huge part of my job. So for me, it's the implications this is going to have, to move around for work.
It's really concerning, and the fact that at the moment the vaccines that are on the market, nobody knows if actually they're going to be effective against this variant or not. It's really worrying for me.
As we mentioned earlier, the World Health Organization has stepped into this, is cautioning countries now against hastily imposing travel restrictions linked to the new B11529 variant of COVID-19, saying they should take a risk-based and scientific approach. Experts are already meeting in South Africa to decide on a name for the new variant and to evaluate if it constitutes a variant of interest or a variant of concern. The Global Health Agency will share further guidance for governments on action that they can take.
WHO is closely monitoring the recently reported variant B11529. WHO is convening a meeting of the Technical Advisory Group on Virus Evolution, so-called TAG-VE, today, actually starting noon Geneva time, which is in a short moment, to better understand the timeline for studies that are underway and to determine if this variant should be designated as a variant of interest or a variant of concern. Early analysis show that this variant has a large number of mutations that require and will undergo further study. It will take a few weeks for us to understand what impact this variant has. Researchers are working to understand more about the mutations and what they potentially mean for how transmissible or virulent this variant is, and how they may impact our diagnostics, therapeutics, and vaccines. This variant, the B11529, was reported at a remarkable speed.
And here's a global update.
France is suspending all flights from southern Africa for 48 hours as global authorities react with alarm to a new coronavirus variant first detected in South Africa. The EU and Britain are among those tightening border controls as scientists seem to find out if the mutation is vaccine resistant. The variant has a spike protein that is dramatically different to the one in the original coronavirus that COVID-19 vaccines are based on. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says flights should be suspended with countries affected by the new COVID variant. The Executive Commission will recommend that all 27 member states implement the measure and hopes for the European Council to give the green light as soon as possible.
The European Commission has today proposed to member states to activate the emergency brake on travel from countries in southern Africa and other countries affected to limit the spread of the new variant.
Belgium says it has detected the first announced case in Europe of a new COVID-19 variant in an unvaccinated person returning from abroad. The infected person tested positive on November 22nd and had not had COVID-19 before. A leading Belgian virologist, Mark van Rans, tweeted that the person had returned from Egypt on November 11th. And while Britain has announced a flight ban from South Africa and its neighboring countries, Health Minister Sajid Javid told Parliament that it was highly likely that the new variant had spread beyond South Africa's borders.
The sequence of this variant, currently called B11529, was first uploaded by Hong Kong from a case of someone travelling from South Africa. The UK was the first country to identify the potential threat of this new variant and to alert international partners. Further cases have been identified in South Africa and in Botswana, and it is highly likely that it is now spread to other countries.
In the meantime, many countries in Central and Eastern Europe have adopted harsher epidemic prevention and control measures, including stepping up vaccination efforts to deal with the worsening pandemic situation after seeing rapid growth in the number of COVID-19 cases.
To other stories now, France's President Emmanuel Macron has accused the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson of not being serious by making a public call for France to take back migrants who reached the UK. It comes days after 27 people drowned after their boat capsized on the English Channel. The row erupted after France withdrew a summit invitation to Home Secretary Priti Patel. The UK government has urged France to reconsider, but the Prime Minister is saying this is a problem we have to fix together.
The French president minced no words when he said during the press conference today that the Prime Minister's letter published on Twitter was not a serious way of handling matters. The decision underlined the poor post-Brexit relations between the two countries and the difficulties they may face working together to curb the flow of migrants. Earlier today, the president and the Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi signed a treaty to strengthen bilateral ties at a time when European diplomacy is being tested by the departure of Germany's Angela Merkel. Mr. Boris Johnson's spokesman says the Prime Minister does not regret his letter to the French President about tackling the migrant crisis in the Channel and that he wrote it in the spirit of partnership and cooperation. Despite the tragedy at sea on Wednesday, migrants remain undeterred to cross the English Channel to Britain. In the camp near the site of a recently dismantled large encampment in Grand Sinthe, migrants gathered around fires, some wrapped in blankets, while others queue for food distributions to get a cup of coffee or tea. Many express sadness and fear over the drownings, but say they still plan to try their luck at a sea crossing. The migrant crisis perhaps continues to remain more evident at the Polish-Belarus border. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko paid a visit to the border center where he told the migrants that his country would help them to return home if they wanted, but will not force them. Thousands are stuck on the European Union's eastern frontier in what the EU says is a crisis Minsk engineered by distributing Belarusian visas in the Middle East, flying them in and then pushing them across the border. But Lukashenko says it was the EU that deliberately provoked a humanitarian crisis that needed to be resolved. He said he would work on solving the issue by New Year's Eve. Lithuania's Interior Minister, Agnė Bilotaitė, says the country may close border crossing points with Belarus if migrants continue to be smuggled into its territory on trucks. As the situation at the border remains dire, Belarusian authorities say they will do everything necessary to keep migrants sheltering close to the border alive and healthy. Human Rights Watch says in a report that Poland shares responsibility with Belarus for the dire conditions.
Joining us is immigration lawyer Dayo Fadino. He joins us from London. Dayo, great to see you. I see the UK and France trade blame over the tragedy on the English Channel and the influx. Despite that, where do you think the blame really lies?
Good afternoon, Amarachi. First of all, my opinion is this, that the blame should not lie anywhere. No single country should be blamed for this. And it's quite surprising and very disheartening, really, that two major European countries with the caliber of civility and doing things properly that we think they have, I'm talking about France and the UK, that all they could be doing at this point is to be trading abuses and trading words, leaking documents or policies that would have to be discussed later. The whole thing is quite, preposterous, really, and petty on the part of these two countries. What they should be doing is trying to get together to find a solution to all this, to what's going on right now. We are talking of the lives of very innocent, desperate migrants fleeing persecution from their countries of origin and trying to actually at least find a life for themselves abroad. Indeed, crossing the channel is very dangerous business, but these people are that desperate. If people could be that desperate to want to leave their countries, to go abroad, mainly Europe, what they should be doing is trying to help them, not to continue arguing over a situation that they should be finding a lasting solution to.
Yeah, and do you think that both countries have done enough to stem irregular migration into Europe?
Well, I think they've done their best, really. I believe these countries, most European countries, particularly France and the UK, have done their best to at least stem illegal migration into Europe. They've done their best to protect their borders and to at least do what they have to do to protect themselves. But I think I've said this before in the past, that the root of the problem of migrants wanting to come to Europe in their droves, the root of that problem is the fact that most Western countries, the European countries, America, the UK, when you actually supply many of these countries with dangerous weapons, and many of their countries are being run and ruled by dictators who do not give a toss or a damn about the human rights of their citizens, and then you have a situation where you have wars, and the whole thing now starts destabilizing many of these countries. This is what normally actually happens. We are now in a state of war. So many migrants would now want to leave their countries to come abroad. The Brits, the European Union, America should do their utmost to try to stem the situation where we have wars, where we have disaster, because these wars indeed engender a situation where you now have so many migrants who now want to leave their countries to come abroad. So that should actually be taken on board, and I hope that many of the European countries and America would do their utmost to at least try to stem the flow of weapons to many of these dictators in Asia, in Africa, in the Middle East. I was reading yesterday that many of these people were coming. They were coming from Iraq. Again, Iraq has been destabilized, and so the Western world and America would have to do their best to actually at least help, control this situation by supporting many of these countries. Instead of actually encouraging them to go to war with each other.
Dayo Fadino, thank you so much. And, your analysis also extends to what's currently going on the Poland-Belarus border. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your analysis with us.
Okay. It's a pleasure, Amarachi. Thank you very much.
The Ethiopian government has announced new restrictions on reporting the war in the country, in which Tigrayan rebels are said to be continuing their advance towards the capital. In a warning to news outlets and social media users, it's banned the reporting of any military movements or updates from the battlefield unless the information has been approved by the government. Meanwhile, state media have shown footage of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, there he is, in a rural location wearing a military uniform, after saying days ago that he would head to the front line to direct the conflict. In an interview, he sounded defiant and said government's troops had retaken some territory.
Keeping pressure on Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. That's against the backdrop of an advance.
Pretty difficult getting news out of Ethiopia at the moment. So we are speaking to correspondent in Nairobi, chief crime writer at Radio Africa Group, Cyrus Ombati, joins us on the telephone. Cyrus, thanks for joining us on the program. Kenya is on high alert as we speak. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed heading to the war front. What does security then look like right now in Kenya?
The crisis in Ethiopia is still kind of developing on daily basis, because today we understand the Prime Minister of the Ethiopian government is now on the war front. I mean, he's in Afar region where it's bordering the Tigray region, where the main fighters are kind of hold up. He has addressed a local media house, and the clip is circulating online to suggest that he's now on the war front, the front line, and he said that they have liberated one or two mountains where the so-called Tigray militia were hiding, or rather were operating from. So they are in charge of that area now, for now. Here in Kenya, the tension is still high. Remember, it's compounded by the terror threats, of which have also been issued in Ethiopia itself, Addis Ababa. Even here in Nairobi and Kenya at large, the country is kind of in a mood of caution and under threat. At the border, Kenyan troops are amassing in terms of checking of those people who are coming in and out, to be sure that everything is in order in terms of security. But you remember in the past 2 weeks, since when the Ethiopian government kind of declared a state of emergency, the Kenyan government also held a Security Council meeting, whereby security agencies were ordered to ensure that all borders are secure and the country is on alert all the time. That remains the same situation here, and since then, remember, President Uhuru Kenyatta has flown to Ethiopia, and yesterday, which was on Thursday, he flew from South Africa to Uganda, neighboring Uganda, for talks with President Yoweri Museveni over the crisis in Ethiopia. One issue you need to be aware of is that Uhuru is leading this kind of exercise in ensuring that there is a truce or rather a solution to the crisis in Ethiopia.
Right, Cyrus, and does the Kenyan government and other countries in the Horn of Africa support Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed amidst Ethiopia's current situation, I mean, the state of war that it is in now?
I mean, the Kenyan government has been clear that Ethiopians, they are supporting Ethiopia at large. President Uhuru Kenyatta flew to Addis Ababa. He met the Prime Minister and the President of Ethiopia. They held talks and almost for the whole day. And after he came back, the Foreign Minister for Kenya, Ambassador Rachel Mamo, declared that they have faith in Ethiopia, and Ethiopians themselves will find a solution to the crisis. Actually, she made the remarks. In the presence of U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken when he was here in Nairobi last week, and she was categorical that they have faith that Ethiopians themselves will find a solution to the crisis. Even in Uganda, I understand Museveni is supporting the sitting government. You remember the AU has been saying that the Ethiopians should be led to solve their own crisis. Former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo, remember, he's been leading this mediation process in Ethiopia in meeting the government officials and the Tigray rebels in Mekele. He flew there 2 weeks ago. He met officials there. And he's saying that this is an African solution that must be met by Africans. Save for some countries, especially maybe you can say Egypt, most of the neighboring countries of Ethiopia, they're supporting Ethiopia, including Kenya, Uganda, Somalia, Eritrea, even Djibouti, where most Western troops are based. So it's an issue of waiting and see what will happen. But then there's the speculation which has been there that Addis Ababa will fall in a week or 2 weeks' time. It looks to be far-fetched. Nothing has happened so far since the declaration was made.
Right, Cyrus, thanks for bringing us up to date on this. And we'll see, as you said, wait and see what happens. Thank you again, Cyrus.
Thank you so much.
Burkina Faso's President Roch Kabore has promised to end dysfunction within the military. He said this in a nationwide broadcast as the nation braced for more protests against worsening insecurity. 3 Burkina Faso soldiers died and 11 militants were killed during an attack on the troops on Wednesday. It's the latest of 3 attacks since November 14 that have killed over 60 security forces and more than a dozen civilians. Hundreds of protesters took to the streets of the capital, Ouagadougou, last week, demanding Kabore resign for failing to rein in militants linked to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State who have waged a 4-year insurgency. Opponents are calling on people to stage fresh protests on Saturday, while schools remain shut across the country in anticipation of unrest.
Riding down the street and gobbling up his roll, his lead float is the stately symbol of this festive holiday. Of course, we're talking about Tom Turkey. His wings flap, his eyes roll, his head bobs, and every year this unofficial mascot of the parade steals the show.
Well, many look forward to this every single year. Spectators lining the streets of Manhattan for the 95th annual Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade after last year's spectacle was scaled down and closed to the public because of the coronavirus pandemic. Other American cities stage parades, but New York's event has become an archetype of the holiday tradition, which is televised across the country to some 50 million viewers as they prepare for Thanksgiving meals. The giant helium balloons depicting cartoon characters and toys are typically the main attraction, with this year's pageant adding newcomers such as Grogu, otherwise known as Baby Yoda, from the Star Wars spin-off series The Mandalorian, and Ada, the young scientist from the Netflix series Ada Twist Scientist. The classic astronaut Snoopy once again appeared in this year's parade, the 9th version of the Snoopy balloon, according to Macy's website. Now, in all, there were 15 balloons guided by marchers holding tethers, the longest of which measured 72 feet, according to Macy's.
Education into the lives of the next generation. It marks the official start of this year's holiday season, and also
you need a whole meal to regain strength after all that walking and enjoying the parade. Thanks again for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.